Okay guys, in this video we're going to be taking another look at Bitcoin. I'm going to try to keep this brief as we are going live tonight, so any further questions do join us for the live stream at 8:30 GMT where we'll go through it a bit more in detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Bitcoin's chart here. We'll obviously have a look at a few news articles that are going on around Bitcoin and what my thoughts and expectations are with Bitcoin over the weekend ahead. Guys, as we get into it, if you find it useful, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, tap on the bell, hit on all notifications, and you won't miss a single video. Right, let's get on into it. Okay guys, here we are. Obviously this is the daily chart. We're using Binance as a data source and we are pairing up against USDT. Now obviously this is the Wyckoff accumulation pattern that we've been talking about for a while, and what's really interesting is the formation of candles that we've had over the last few days, specifically over the last week, and ultimately what this actually looks like and what could be in store for the weekend. So obviously, loads of people in the space are talking about the spring actually have happened, and if the spring has happened, i.e. this particular moment just down here, then where would actually we be in the cycle right at this moment? And obviously, I believe that we're in phase B, the secondary test of phase B specifically down here, just because ultimately the selling climax, and this is the first thing that's gone lower than the selling climax, which is usually the secondary test in phase B, okay? So when it comes to the spring being lower than our secondary test, and obviously our secondary test being lower than our selling climax, that's why I feel this hasn't happened. But of course, this is crypto, and we could have completely skipped this step altogether, and actually that's what these two wicks were over here. Again, it's really hard to tell until you get a little bit through what goes on over this side, and my expectations are that this is the likely outcome, a higher probability of this in the scenario in my mind, that we're heading to that 40k level before we come down to this area down here. Again, the formation of candles that we see here in the charts for Bitcoin, we had the push to the upside, we had the expected pullback here, and then we had the push to the upside again, and now the unexpected pullback here. This is where we fell out of the channel. There was a large selling volume pushing the price down at this point. Now we are seeing a bit of a flip and a turn to this on the hourly chart, and we'll get into that in a moment. But again, if you follow the schematic, in theory we should be pushing the price to the upside as we do head to this area here. Now obviously I didn't think it was going to be a straight line straight to the 40k level. We thought we were going to have volatility, but this was quite a steep correction, and if we do not hold this area here, then ultimately we could see Bitcoin fall down a little bit lower. And I'll get into a few of the additional things that could be basically invalidating this entire schematic, at least from a phase B point of view. Now let's take a look and see if we were in phase C, and our phase C spring event was this point in time. We had the push to the upside, we had one correction, we pushed up, then we had a second correction. Well, if this was your what was going on down here in spring, we had one push to the upside, we had one down, we had one up, we had one down. In theory, we'll be pushing to the upside next, right? So again, in line with this here. So inconclusive to know for sure if we do push the price up, that actually will be in the same position on both of these schematics, whether we are phase B or phase C. They would be mirroring the same kind of motions at the moment. Obviously, with phase B and the secondary test of phase B pushing to the upside to find this target up here, the expectation was we wouldn't have as deep of a correction as this at this point in time, specifically after we had this correction here. So that is a little bit worrisome, and we'll obviously continue to see and monitor that situation. But again, the likelihood here is the higher probability, regardless of whether you believe we're in phase C or phase B, is we should be pushing the price of Bitcoin to the upside. There is, of course, some looming things and some issues with that on both scenarios, whether we are claiming to be phase B or phase C in this particular scenario. So it's worth, before I get into that hourly stuff, kind of getting into a few things that have been going on in the space. So the first thing that's worth talking about is obviously Bitcoin bouncing at a key range amid hope of Bitcoin price will hopefully avoid a big nuke. And ultimately what they're talking about here is that dip to the 20,000K, or $20,000 that people keep talking about, right? And basically this is an unexpected scenario for many in the space. Many traders and analysts do not see this as a likely outcome. It's possible by all stretches of the imagination. Anything is possible. So we can't say it's not likely, but it's very unlikely. The probability of going down to 20k is very, very small. It can happen, but it's not likely to happen. And that's ultimately what they're talking about in this article here, and obviously talking about these key support levels and making sure that they hold. Now, what's really interesting about this and this piece of analysis is where we are right now on the hourly chart. So I'll get into that in a moment, but it's worth really paying attention to what this key level is, as when that gets broken, we are likely to potentially have a bit of a tumble to the downside, and I can see the next kind of support level being ultimately around that kind of 30k area. So again, breaching that could be catastrophic for Bitcoin. So we'll have to watch that scenario. Now, the other thing that's worth kind of bringing up is how the bulls and the bears are fighting over 34K Bitcoin price. And basically, this is all around those $445 million worth of options that expiry does loom. Now, this particular piece is really interesting. It goes into a lot of detail about, how the bulls have only just edged it. They're getting a little bit more, but it's pretty much neck and neck. They barely have the edge at this point in time. And again, this is actually just coming from bybit.com, and you can check this out here. But ultimately, you can see how you can take a look at the ratio for call put ratio of volume is actually at 1.1. So you can tell that the bulls only have just got this, and we took about the call to put ratio over here at 1.7 as well. So ultimately, they've got it, but not by much of a margin. So it's important that we understand what's going on here. At the moment, the bulls have or are winning the fight, but it doesn't take a lot to slip from this particular point in time. So we'll have to continue to monitor these options to see how things do progress. So really just wanted to kind of flag that. Obviously, back up into extreme fear as reporting on yesterday's kind of charts, and nothing really to report on Bitcoin dominance. It's kind of still doing what it's supposed to be doing. So let's take a look at Bitcoin on our hourly and go through what the support line is that we're talking about here. So here we can see that there was a bit of a formation of a head and shoulder on this hourly chart. It's just a small one. So basically you can see here, shoulder, head, shoulder, and then we came down. Okay, so ultimately that would have been the expected when we found good support on this one. So this is something that we saw briefly last night. Unable to get this a video out on it, but basically there was a head and shoulder pattern here, just kind of forming at this point over here. So again, I'll just throw this on so you can kind of see you have the shoulder at this point here. We go up to the head, we come back down to our shoulder over this side, and then again we come on down. And then obviously once you breach that neckline, you end up coming right the way back down into this lower bound down here. So again, for Bitcoin, this was kind of, it was frustrating that we broke out of that channel, then this formed, and obviously then it was going to break. Now obviously you're finding this upper barrier of resistance now. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just mark this up on our hourly chart so we're aware of where that sits, right? So it's right up here. And ultimately what this particular trend line is doing is it's, or support line, it shows you the neckline of our head and shoulder pattern here. And obviously where we're coming back up, testing it and falling back down. So again, this is something that is very, very common for a head and shoulder pattern. So again, pushing up, finding this upper boundary here, this upper resistance line, it comes in at 34K. That has to hold. If it doesn't hold, if we don't breach this area, which is, I think, unlikely at this point in time, and turn this into a good support line, then obviously we'll be coming back down to our support line. And it's our support line that absolutely has to hold. And this one comes in at $32,680 approximately. So for us, we're right inside this now. We're being trapped inside here, right? This is my expectations. Obviously, we have utilized a reasonable amount of our relative strength index here to push the price of Bitcoin up to this upper bound. So imagine that we're going to come up against this resistance soon as we approach the upper end of our relative strength index, where we'll have this reversal coming in. And obviously what we're looking for is to basically find good support, bounce from here and get some more momentum behind it before pushing on up. The expectations, guys, according to the daily chart, is that we are going to be pushing the price of Bitcoin to the upside. But obviously we have to hold 32,680, approximately that line there. If we do not hold that, then ultimately there is a potential to fall all the way down back towards our 30K area. And again, that's not in line with our expectations within that Wyckoff accumulation pattern. It would be very unusual to see such a thing. So again, the expectations are that this will hold, but again, we have to be open to the fact that it might not. Now, when we take a look at the volume here, you can see a few interesting things as well. We can see how we have some interesting volume actually starting to build up here on the buying side, right? So we've had a pretty green motion to the upside. Now, what's interesting about this is that volume has started to increase on these hours here. And if this continues, then that will be a good sign to actually pierce this level here and get the back test on this as a new support line, previously resistance. Now, obviously, historically, when we take a look at what's been going on when we've been pushing the price up, the volumes have been going down. So there is a shift in sentiment here to push that price back to the upside past this neckline that we've had on our head and shoulder pattern. So ultimately, guys, I imagine that we'll find resistance. We'll have a reversal in our volume. And what we're looking for here in this reversal, once we push the relative strength index to the upside, find that resistance, the volume should hopefully decrease. Okay, we're looking to pump it up a little bit higher, find the resistance in buying volume to the upside, and then once we're at the top, we're looking to decrease the volume whilst we decrease the price and we decrease our relative strength index. And that's going to be absolutely crucial. If there's an increase in volume from a selling perspective while pushing the price down, I would worry that our support line will not hold. So watching that volume is going to be absolutely key to seeing whether or not this line here is likely to hold. We need to be a reasonably low level on this relative strength index for this to support level to hold, with good low volume coming in, allowing those purchasing volume to really pick up again. And hopefully that catalyst will be the change that pushes us above our resistance of 34K and gets us out of this kind of hourly pattern here, and above that neckline once again. And again, what we want to talk about, guys, is obviously our expectations here still are in line with this, but we are now getting to that point where it could be invalidated very quickly, no matter what scenario you look at, whether you're in the phase B scenario, where I think we are, or whether or not you're in a phase C scenario, thinking that the spring event has happened. Both of these patterns should be dictating that the price moves up to the upside. In the case of a phase C going into phase D is what we would be looking for there, would be taking Bitcoin up towards that 37 to 38K. And in the phase B scenario, we should be looking up towards 39, 40K before a pullback is due. So both of these scenarios are not going to help us, but one thing is for certain, in the due course, we'll know definitively which one of these patterns is likely, is a likely scenario, whether or not we fall lower than our secondary test in phase B, indicating a spring event, or whether or not we're actually going to pull back lower than our previous areas over here within phase D, which would indicate that we're in phase B. Of course, if we basically continue to grow and we actually pierce above 42K, then we are definitely in that sign of strength, pushing up into phase E, and we'll be out of this this cycle altogether, which would be faster than anticipated. So again, I still feel that actually this is likely to last longer. Institutions still have more to accumulate. So therefore, I'd like to see us in phase D pushing into phase E, but my worries are, guys, that we are still here and things are going to be dragged out a little bit longer. But again, we'll have to monitor the situation. If we have a pullback right here, that would put us in phase C much earlier than anticipated, and again would push us then up to going into phase D and E. So again, obviously, if you're hodling, you're doing okay. If you are using leverage trading, be very, very cautious. This entire pattern, there are many variations. I've only drawn 2 on this chart. It's important that you do not get caught out in any way, shape or form. Make sure you protect yourselves. Not financial advisor, nor is Chris, but it's important that you do your own research and all that kind of jazz. And I personally just avoid leverage where possible. Guys, hopefully you found this update useful and informative. It's a brief one, but if you join us tonight on our live stream, we'll probably go through a bit more detail on various different cryptocurrencies, not just Bitcoin, but also the altcoins as well. Guys, found it useful? Hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. And of course, subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell, tap on all, and you'll be kept up to date with all the analysis and news that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With that said, done and out of the way, guys, hope you have a fantastic day, and hopefully I'll catch you later.